Are you offering sellers 70 to 75% of ARV and wondering why you're still not getting any real estate deals? Well, I've made over $1 million by the age of 23 by flipping and wholesaling houses, and let me tell you, I never follow that rule that says you have to offer 70 to 75% of ARV because that stuff does not work. So today, I'm gonna show you guys exactly how to figure out how much you could offer a seller, and I'm even gonna show you guys the exact calculator that I use so that you guys can use that calculator as well. And better yet, if you shoot me a DM on Instagram, I'll just send you the calculator completely for free. Okay, so there's a couple of things that you guys are gonna want to learn here, and they're all pretty simple. So fortunately, this is simple and pretty easy to learn, but it's also very important. So let's just come up with some hypothetical numbers, for example. So Max, you want to give me just give me a number for ARV.
ARV 320,000.
Cool. Marco, give me a number for rehab cost. What's the property going to cost? Can be whatever you want.
30,000.
$30,000 for rehab. Okay. Okay. So let me talk about some of these things really quick. We've put a $320,000 ARV on here. A rehab, 30 grand. A $30,000 rehab is a pretty quick rehab. Typically for me, I like to budget around $1,000 a day. So if rehab is going to cost like 30 grand, then the construction is going to take how many days do you guys think?
Around 30.
Right. So about a month. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to have to figure out here is going to be our holding time. Okay. The name kind of gives it away, but do you guys kind of know what holding time might be?
How long you have to hold the property for?
Right. How long you're going to own the house for, right? So what are all the things what do you think kind of factors into how long you're going to be holding a property for? Like what comes to mind right away?
Rehab time period.
Right. So we know at the bare minimum, we're going to hold it for 30 days because
Like
30 days is construction. Say that last part again, Max.
I just said the time it takes to rehab the property.
Right. So we know that's at least like 30 days. What else kind of can go into, can play a role in how long we hold on to a property?
Like the holding cost, because you still have to pay like the mortgage, no?
Yeah. I guess what I'm asking is like besides the rehab, what else takes time?
Closing.
Boom. There we go. How long is a closing typically?
Probably half a month to another month.
So most closings with like a traditional buyer that's getting a loan and all that stuff are going to be around 30 days long. For us that we're just buying these houses cash, we can close them, super fast because we don't got to go get a loan. We don't have to go get an appraisal, a formal inspection, like all these things, repair requests, all of that. So we're already at like 2 months right there between a 30-day escrow and 30 days for construction. Anything else come to mind that might cause us to hold the property for a minute?
I mean, any setbacks that could happen with
Absolutely.
the rehab.
Right. What about the time that it takes on the MLS to find a buyer?
That too, it could take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months.
Yeah, exactly. Right. What about if you're giving the seller a lease back? So after you buy the property off of them, you're going to be, letting them stay in the property for a little bit, finish packing up their things. And because that's just part of the service that we provide. Right. So all of these different things kind of affect our hold time. Bare minimum. I never want to put my hold time less than 4 months for all those reasons. 4 months is typically the lowest that I'll put it in there. As you guys can see right here, there's fees associated with hold time, right? So like let's say if it takes me 4 months of owning this property, I'm going to pay $7,100 to whoever lets me borrow the money. But what if it takes me 10 months, right? I'm going to pay them $17,000 just for letting me borrow, 147 grand, well, plus 30 grand, right? So we definitely want to factor in hold costs because if you think a project is going to take you 4 months and it takes you 10 months, well, you're now paying an extra, in this case, an extra 10 grand. And I mean, houses here in Vegas are a lot more expensive than like 147. So typically, I mean, the average house that we buy is like closer to 300. So 300,000, 10 months, you're gonna, pay 33 grand, right? So those are all things that you have to factor into, just take into consideration. And then I kind of skipped over this one here that says estimated HOA costs. So I should have told you this, but we're only focusing on the boxes in orange. All the other stuff is just kind of like pre-filled already. But I skipped over the estimated HOA because I mean, here in Vegas, an HOA is probably like 20, 25 bucks a month. 25 bucks a month is not going to make or break a deal. But if you wanted to, just for the sake of doing
Yeah.
things correctly, we can add 25 bucks a month in there. And then the final thing, give me a purchase price. Max, just throw a number out.
Purchase price 240.
Okay. Does this look like a deal? Is this something someone should buy?
16,875.
Feel like for a wholesale, maybe not for a flip. It's too risky, no?
Okay, let's talk about that. So you're saying for a wholesale, maybe. So you're saying you would lock it up at 240 if you were the wholesaler, or like you would
No,
like
Um,
I don't
you
think
would have to be
so.
way below.
okay,
You'd have to be below that.
okay, what would you have to be at?
You'd have to be probably, I'd imagine, like 200 to, yeah, 200 probably.
200. Okay, so at 200, if
Somewhere
you
around there, 'cause 16,000 is already not that much. Plus, you're gonna tack on a 25K charge to an investor.
right. Okay, so you're saying if you're the wholesaler, you lock this up at 200?
I would hope, yeah, somewhere around
Okay.
there.
Cool. And then what would you try selling it to an investor for?
225.
225. Okay, let's see. So at 225, the flipper makes 32 grand. What do you guys think of the deal now? Like, is this a deal? Is this not a deal? Like, what do you guys think? Help me
I'd say
out
it's
here.
a deal.
You guys say what?
I
I
think
think
that's a
it's a
deal
deal.
Okay. What makes it a deal? Why should someone pay 225 for this property?
because they're gonna make $32,000 profit if they upscale it.
Okay, and I mean, 32 is obviously better than 16, but why wasn't it a deal at 16? Because I mean, most people don't even make $16,000 in a month. So why were you guys saying that someone should turn down, making 16 grand on this flip? Like that 16
Because
grand is a lot of
It'd be
money.
over
yeah,
it'd be over 4 months.
yeah.
And there's also risk because there could be problems like unforeseen when you buy the property that would chip away at that 16 grand.
Okay, so you're saying it's going to take 4 months. What if they're buying a house every single month, projected to make, 16 grand? So if they're buying 12 in a year, then technically, one is going to be closing every single month. So they're basically like bringing in 16 grand a month. Like, is that still not good? You're right. Like everything you said is correct. I'm just trying to get more information out of you. So you were saying
No.
like, so you said something about chipping away. Can you like elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, when you buy a property, it is in the agent has to disclose everything that is wrong that they know of, but they can miss things unless there's a total inspection done. So if they miss things, then you're kind of screwed. You're losing more of your money that you're making.
Right.
It's just taking away from your total profit.
You guys are 100% correct. Granted, you guys like working on our team and everything, working with us, you guys only handle like talking to agents. But I'm spending like 30 to 40 grand a month right now on marketing to sellers. So yes, agents do have to provide you, at least here in Las Vegas, what's called an SRPD, and that stands for a seller's real property disclosure. And basically all that is where the seller fills out everything that's wrong with the property that they're aware of. But that's only really required when a property is going through a realtor. What about when the houses are not going through a realtor and the seller's not required to disclose certain things, right? Everything you said is exactly correct. $16,000, if it was like a guaranteed $16,000, then sure, maybe, right? Like I'll never, if Marco, you want to send me 16 grand right now, I promise you I will never say no to that. Like never
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
But it's just way too risky, right? Everything you guys said is correct. So, what I think we had like 240 on here. So at 240, it makes 16. Can I share with you guys a real example of a deal that I bought not too long ago?
Yeah.
So we had an ARV of 285. We were gonna do a very quick cleanup to this one and spend 15 on this one. And we bought this one, I think, for 215. Or it was actually a little less. I think we bought it for like 212. These were the numbers when I bought the house. We had a 285 ARV, a 15K rehab, and a 212 purchase price, projected to make 28,000. How much money do you guys think we made on that house?
After everything,
Yeah, after every
after everything.
I will tell you, things did not go as planned. How much money do you think
Okay.
we ended up making?
Well, I'm guessing minimum maybe 20.
Okay, maybe 20 max. What do you think?
Correct. Yeah.
I'm gonna lowball 10.
Okay, we made $300 on this property. Okay. And originally I thought a couple different things at first. At one point I was like, we're gonna end up losing money on this house. At another point, I was like, okay, we ended up making $792 on the property. But I ended up getting hit with a bill by the city later. They said that like some water wasn't paid and they billed me for like 450 bucks. So really we made like $300. And out of that $300, I still paid my team. So I took home like 100 bucks or nothing. We basically broke even. And so you might be wondering like, how do you go from a projected profit of, 28, almost 29 grand to a break even? Well, let me just kind of share with you guys like some of the things that can happen when you're flipping so you can kind of have a better understanding of when or it does or when it doesn't make sense to offer a certain price for a property. So for starters, the property got broken into 3 times. And so when a property gets broken into, there's going to be damages, obviously, and damages only get solved by spending money to fix those things, right? So my $15,000 rehab ended up being closer to like a 28 or a $29,000 rehab because of all the break-ins. Okay. And then on top of that, it was sitting on the market a little bit longer than what we wanted to. So we just had to keep dropping the price, like dropping the price. Um, and it eventually ended up selling for $272,000. So we went from 285 ARV to 272. And then we went from a $15,000 rehab to a basically a $28,000 rehab. And then the holding time, it came out to like 4.5 months or something like that. And then a couple other things happened like here and there. And it was just a pretty big break even, right? Now imagine if we would have bought that property projecting to make 16 grand instead of projecting to make, almost 30. Instead of breaking even, I would have lost basically $15,000 on that property, right? So you guys were correct, but now that you see like a real example, do you understand why something that's projected to make you $16,000 is clearly just not enough of a cushion for you, not only for you to make money, but for you to not risking having to lose money? Do you guys understand why, with this example? And you guys were correct with like your theory before, but does this example make it a little bit more of like more real to you on why you need more of a cushion to before you buy a house? What about you,
Definitely.
Marco? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So with that being said, what makes something, what's the criteria? I think what did we put for ARV for that example? I think you guys said 320 it was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I think for rehab you guys said 30.
30.
I think we had 4 on here. And then for purchase price, I think we came down to 225, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Someone might think this was scripted, but like you guys know it's not. I just randomly asked you guys for numbers, right? I didn't say, hey, like say this number or none of that crap, right?
Yeah.
Ironically, this is the perfect example of a perfect deal. And here's why. I have a couple of rules for when I'm flipping properties, what it needs to meet. And a lot of people that I wholesale my houses to, they have very similar rules as well for, the guidelines that a property needs to meet. So number one, you want your projected profit to be somewhere around 10% of your ARV. In this case, it's kind of ironic that we put an ARV at 320,000 and a projected profit just so happened to be like 32, which is like pretty much, right at 10%. Now, quick question for you before I move on to the next rule. If the purchase price was 230, is this still something worth buying or no?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, and why?
I mean, still a lot of money and you still have plenty of a cushion.
Right. Cool. I agree. Good job. Cool. So one rule right here. So you want your projected profit to be around 10% of ARV. Now, I know you guys, you're kind of learning a little bit about like how to generate leads and wholesale. Um, we're not really having you guys flip or anything right now, but as someone who's like helping us with our wholesales, how do you think knowing what we just talked about right now before we move on to the next rule, how do you think that just kind of helps you figure out what to offer? Like how does this pertain to you at all? Because you're not flipping.
I mean, we don't have to waste time with a deal that doesn't make sense if we can disclose to the selling agent around the price that we'd have to be at for it to make
Boom.
sense.
Exactly. And make sense for who ultimately? Like, because who do you need it to make sense for?
Us,
Yes, you, but like, who does it need to make sense for first so that it can make sense for you?
To the seller,
the
Not the
agent.
seller or the
Buyer.
agent,
the buyer.
the buyer. Thank you. If it doesn't make sense for the buyer, they're not going to buy it. And if they don't buy it, how much money do you make? Nothing, right? You don't make anything. Exactly. So, okay, if someone says right here, "Hey, Max, Marco, you can take this property for 225," I would still say, "Hey, let's lock it up. Let's still put this property under contract." But if we're looking to wholesale it, can we really make a lot of money wholesaling this house?
No,
Right.
Maybe
How
not.
much money? How much money do you guys think we can make on the wholesale?
at best
Like
5K,
five,
Yeah,
10.
yeah.
maybe 10. I do have some people, if it's like a smaller rehab like this, that they're like, hey, I'd be willing to, kind of risk it to make 20 grand or 22 grand, right? So maybe we'd be able to, make for sure. I think we could get 5, but probably we could get 10. And even that is not even a great wholesale because our company's average wholesale makes around like 23 right now. So to make 5 or 10, that's like 25 to 50%, not even of what we're typically, making on an assignment. Now, is this something that if we locked up, do you think it makes more sense to wholesale this or for us to flip this?
Let's
Flip.
say wholesale.
Okay, you say flip, you say wholesale. Let me hear your reasonings on that.
I mean, I feel like if you decide to wholesale, I mean, you can make a, not so quick money, but I mean, you can make the money's gonna be there, 5,000, maybe 10. But if you decide to flip, you're gonna be looking at a projected profit of like maybe 20,000, and it's more risk,
Why?
like we were talking about.
Okay, question. So you're saying we could wholesale this for 5, maybe 10, or if we decide to flip it, we'd be looking at a projected profit of 20. Why would
Yeah.
we be looking at a projected profit of 20?
Because let's say I wholesale it, I mean, I'm gonna charge my 5 to 10,000, and then as right here it says 32,000, projected
Oh,
profit.
I mean, if we flip it, right? So like if we buy it
Oh,
at 225, right? It says we're projected to make 32. So I'm
225.
saying, hey, do you think it makes more sense for us to flip it and make 30 or wholesale it and make 10?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That was a little harder now.
Yeah. So what do you think? Does it make more sense to flip it and make 10? Sorry, flip it and make 30 or wholesale it and make 10?
Yeah, flip it. Yeah,
You say flip it?
yeah.
Okay. But what if you have like $500 left in the bank account and you have like employee salaries due tomorrow? I mean, today's
Then
payday, right?
wholesale.
Then maybe wholesale, right? So they're, I'm asking you guys like a lot of like devil's
I think
advocate questions, but it's just because I need you guys like thinking kind of how I think when I'm looking at a property. And I'm so
also
grateful. Go ahead.
also wouldn't it be beneficial if you have a lot of properties to host, like if you have a lot of leads that you've closed on to wholesale over it? I would say it's more beneficial to flip if you have less properties coming in
Yeah.
because it's easier to hold on turnover.
Right. So for instance, if I know we're good on cash and like I'm so grateful that we've never really been in a position where I'm like, holy crap, if we don't like sell this deal right now, like, we're going out of business. But if we're doing good on cash and we don't need to make the money right now, and if it doesn't seem like too risky of a deal and I can afford to wait a little bit, I'll say, you know what? I'm not going to take the 5 or 10 on the assignment. I'm just going to flip it. In fact, we have a deal right now with very similar numbers to this. I think it's a 325 ARV. So it's very similar. And we could make 5 for sure on the assignment, maybe 10, I don't know, but we can make like 31 on the flip. And I'm like, okay, because we have a good cash position, because the flip is pretty low risk, I say, hey, let's just go ahead and let's flip this one. So rule number 1, like we just talked about, you want your projected profit to be somewhere close to 10% of the ARV. So we already know a flipper is going to be around like 220, 225, 230, maybe even 235 on this. So if we wanted to wholesale it, we just need to get the property under that, right? So my team, like I said, our team, we're doing around, a little less than 25,000 per assignment, closer to 23-ish. So for us, max, like you said earlier, I would be looking to get this thing locked up at 200. Now, if my acquisitions guy was like, "Hey bro, like the best I could get this one for is 225. What do you think?" I would say, "Fine, lock it up and I'm just going to buy it and flip it instead of, assigning it, and we'll still make our money, God willing. It's just going to take, as it says right here, it's going to take 4 months to make our money, as opposed to a wholesale. If we got it at 200 and we wholesaled it for 225, we could make 25 in how much time? Can you guys help me out? How long would it take to get
Well,
paid on the wholesale?
2 weeks, maybe a month.
Yeah,
a
2 to 4
month.
weeks, right? Like all the deals that you guys have gotten us, we've closed them in 2 to 4 weeks, right? So cool. So moving on to rule number 2, you want your projected profit to be something close to your rehab cost. So if your rehab costs, for example, were, let's say, 60,000, well, I put 600,000. That's a big rehab.
Hmm.
Say 60,000, and you were getting this deal for, let's say, 200, should you buy it?
No,
Mm.
Okay, no, and why?
It should be similar to the rehab cost.
Yeah, but why do you think that's important? Because, like, hey,
because you're
30.
going to be putting.
Mhm. Go ahead.
Earlier, what we talked about was it's like $1,000 to 1 day of rehab. So
Right.
you're going to be putting 60 days worth of rehab into making $30,000.
You're making
It's
some really
just
good points. Go ahead.
it's just like the hourly wage to I don't know how to describe it. Like hourly pay to that is not that high, even though it is $30,000.
Right. So bare minimum, we're always factoring in 4 months, right? If it's a $30,000 rehab, then we know we're 1 month for construction. Let's say it takes a month on the MLS to find a buyer, another month to close escrow. We're at 3 months right there. And that's with no unforeseens, right? That's what, if everything goes on time with construction, if the buyer doesn't back out during escrow, which, we've had buyers back out like 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, whatever, then you have to start that process over. So we're already at 3 months, assuming everything is going perfect, which when you're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars, I don't think it's very smart for you to just assume everything's going to go perfect, right? You want to give yourself a little bit of buffer. And that 4 months was with the $30,000 rehab budget. So if we're at a $60,000 rehab budget, I'm putting this thing minimum 5 months of hold time. So 5 months of hold time, that took us from $27,000 in projected all the way down to 23.8. I've done about 100 deals now between like flips and wholesales. And on all of my flips, they've all gone a little bit over budget. Typically, if they go within, let's say, like 10% over budget, that's okay. But sometimes they go over budget by more than that, right? So let's say, for instance, let's say, and 10% would be 66,000. Let's say it goes to $70,000. Oh, so it goes 10 grand over budget. And that could be a billion different reasons why. So for instance, we wholesaled a property not too long ago, and the AC was working fine when we put it under contract. And the buyer walked it, and he checked it out. The AC was fine, and he told me the day before he went to go resell it, the AC just stopped working. And I'm like, weird. And he's like, yeah, because the AC was working perfectly fine for the 2 months that we were doing construction. So he found it really weird that it just went out of nowhere. Rehabs can go over budget for things that aren't even your fault. Or for instance, here in Vegas, it doesn't rain too often, right? We had a property where everything was fine. Like we sent out an inspector, the roof looked good. It rained really, really hard, and then we looked at the property and there were some leaks on the inside coming from the roof. That's going to be a couple $1,000 repair. You want to fix up the roof and do all those things, right? So you just never know what's going to happen. So that could go from a $60,000 expense to, let's say, $75,000 for rehab. And then what if it gets broken into? Like I said, I had a house that got broken into 3 times. I had another house that got broken into once, within like the same week or something. And what if, for instance, this happened like almost 2 years ago? Rates jumped, right? Interest rates went from like 3 to 5 to 7 in a really short period of time. When interest rates change like that, houses sell for less, because if someone has to pay a higher interest rate, what they can afford for a property goes down. So this house that might have sold for 320, what if it's now only selling for 305? So now you're already like projecting to
Mm.
lose money, right? So the more, like the more you add to rehab, the more like a project has to get done to it, the more you want to factor in for your profit as well. So if we were projecting a $60,000 renovation on this, I need to stop putting that in at 600. And we had a 320 ARV. I am gonna say, okay, I want to make bare minimum, like 45 on this one. Ideally, I want to make 60, don't get me wrong, but I would still take it if I can, if I can make like 45. Now, that's because I've already done a ton of deals. Um, if this was like my first deal though, I'd probably need it a little bit cheaper. So for me, I'd probably pay like 175 to 180 for this property for those reasons. Now, if I'm a wholesaler though, okay, if I'm a wholesaler and I know a flipper is willing to pay like 175 to 180, what do you guys think I need to get this property under contract for?
Maybe 150,
Boom.
155.
That's the number I would tell my team all day. 150. We wholesale it, we make 25, and we're out the door. Make sense? For sure. And then, so I'll just kind of teach you guys, those are the main things you need to know, but I'll also tell you guys all the fees that get taken into account. So there's the commission you're paying the buyer's agent because someone brought you a buyer when you sold this house and they need to get paid. That's going to be 2.5 to 3%. You're going to pay the agent who put it on the MLS for you. I pay a flat fee of $1,500. You're going to pay closing costs. Okay. So you're going to pay, typically when you buy the house, you're going to pay, what we offer these sellers is that they don't pay any closing costs when they sell to us. So we pay the seller's closing costs and we pay our own closing costs. Each closing cost, at least here in Las Vegas, is going to be roughly 1% of the sales price. So we pay 1% to buy it. We pay our closing costs. We pay 1% for the seller. And then when we go to sell this property ourselves, we're paying 1% for us being the seller. So we're paying like 3% in closing costs. Does that make sense? Utilities, taxes, and insurance. This is just like a formula here based on like the purchase price and like all these other things. But an estimate for this would be about $4,000 for this price of a home. 25 bucks for HOA. That's not too big of a deal. And here's just like totals and whatnot. So 83 grand between rehab costs and all these. Here we have a loan. So we're taking out a loan. We're borrowing $210,000. Why are we borrowing $210,000?
To purchase a property and flip it
Purchase it and what? I'm sorry?
and rehab it.
Exactly. Yeah. So you need 210, maybe a little bit more for closing costs, but 210 is like a round number at a 12% annualized interest rate, right? So if you get 12% for the year, that comes out to 1% per month. At 5 months, you're going to pay $10,500 just in interest as a big fat thank you for letting me borrow this money. And so here you guys can see like, because of all these costs, you just got to get the property low enough to be able to still make a profit. Does that all make sense? Do you guys have any questions after looking at this on how do I figure out how much I can offer if I want to flip a property, if I want to wholesale it?